Hello and welcome. This is Dan Olds, and this is the pregame call for the Student Cluster Challenge. It's going to be taking place at ISC14 in Leipzig in just a little bit. What we're going to do here in this call is break down the field ahead of the competition. This call is also going to help you do a lot better in your office betting pools this year. An informed gambler is a better gambler. So with that said, I'm going to bring in my co-host here. This is Brian Sparks, who is with the HPC Advisory Council, or the HPCAC. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Dan?
Not too bad. Brian's not only a longtime student cluster competition observer, but he's also an insider. He's been very instrumental in bringing about the ISC competition. And this is what, your third year this year?
Yes, this is our third year, and we've definitely been participating with all the ones happening at the Supercomputing Conference in November for quite a number of years, as well as helping out with the ASC Student Cluster Competition, and then also other regional competitions that are happening like within South Africa and whatnot.
Yeah, you guys have done a great job in helping to support the students and get these things off the ground, and it's growing like can't believe. I mean, we have 3 major competitions now. We have a regional competition. Other ones are rumored to be getting off the ground. But let's for a second here just back up and talk about the basics. What all these competitions have in common is that it's university students, and they are designing and configuring their own supercomputers, either working with sponsors or a sponsor. And the way this typically works is that they can run any hardware that's generally available. The only constraint they have is that their system has to stay under a 3,000 watt power cap at all times. And they can't change the configuration once they get started. If they boot it, then they're going to run it. Any other rules we ought to talk about, Brian? Let's see, they're going to run real scientific applications, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, there'll be a series of applications. There's going to be some tests involved in terms with LINPACK, and of course there's also the meetup with the other executives around the area to be able to provide insights on how they got to X, Y, and Z, and do kind of a testimonial on what they've learned going through this whole process.
Sure.
So there is a little piece to the equation outside of actually doing the configuration and running.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the format of the ISC competition. It's different, right? It's not like the other competitions.
Well, some of the other competitions, it's a 24 hours
48
or maybe 4 days.
Yeah.
So it's all day and all night. And what makes us a little bit more unique is that it's not very often that you get a lot of students from around the world into a place that maybe they've never been before. And we want to be able to at least give them some time in the evening or at night to be able to explore the area and just make it a little bit more, maybe humane is the right word.
Humane's probably a pretty good word to use. There's still a lot of pressure, though. The thing where it's different with ISC is that students are only working on 1 or 2, maybe 3 applications a day in a set time period. So it's really testing their ability to optimize a particular application and know all the knobs and sliders they need to adjust, right?
Right. And, some people get started late to the game because of other logistical issues that happen, whether servers don't arrive, right? Some people didn't actually get their equipment until the very last minute. So it had them, South Africa as an example.
That's right.
The ones that didn't get their equipment until the very last moment, yet they were still able to overcome that obstacle and win the whole thing.
Well, and the key is to really know those workloads, I think.
Well, absolutely. Know what you're doing with the equipment and setting up, but these things can fail too as well, even
Sure.
through the shipping process. And even when you think you have the right configuration and you've tested it before at your university, things can happen, and it's really interesting and a great way for students to get involved with other vendors within the HPC community, because these students, it's not the advisors, that if there's a problem, they have to go to that vendor and say, hey, look, we're having an issue with with either this equipment or with this software, and they beg for help and they try to get what they can in terms of maybe the latest drivers or whatnot. So there's a lot of interaction that they have to do with the vendor community, which is
Yep.
great because it causes that interaction between them.
And we see that in almost every competition. There's some team that's just snake bit, or a couple of teams, and we get to see how they troubleshoot and how they overcome, adapt, overcome, and triumph.
And I definitely applaud those vendors who are willing to say, let's say a server goes down and they go, hey, we have a backup server that we're not going to be using for a demonstration, or, we'll just limit our demonstration, be able to provide you a server so that way you can complete your task. So, for those vendors that do that, very, very,
Yes,
very much in terms
very
of kudos that goes to them.
exactly. Let's take a look at the applications real quick here. As usual, they're going to be running the HPCC benchmark suite, but with a separate LIN pack for the award, right?
That's correct.
And then we have Quantum Espresso, which, if I remember right, has been used in other competitions and may have given the students a little bit of problem.
If I was a student in any of these competitions and I'm looking at the applications that are known, I would definitely be going to the HPC Advisory Council website and looking at all the best practices
Yep.
and installation guides for these. If they're not doing it, they should. That's just a little plug for hpcadvisorycouncil.com. But yeah, I mean, some of these can be very tricky, especially when coprocessors are involved.
Exactly. Going down the slate of applications, we've got Open Foam, which is a solver for fluid flows, chemical reactions, turbulence, heat transfer, stuff like that. Gadget, which if I had to model a galaxy and I only had one tool in my toolbox, I'd want it to be Gadget. That's just
Why
me,
is
though,
that, Dan?
because it does a really good job at it.
I'll take your word for it.
Excellent. Then there's going to be a secret application, which is, of course, a secret, but I've heard rumors that it might be a solver for Microsoft Windows Minesweeper. Could you comment on that at all?
No, absolutely no comment on the secret application.
Okay. So this year we're going to have, what, 5 different awards, right?
Right, same as last year.
Same as last year. So we have the overall championship, we have the second place, third place, highest LIN pack, and then the fan favorite, which will be judged by online voting, and we'll get more to people on that.
Okay, absolutely.
So with this, let's dive into the teams. We have a really interesting mix, and this year a pretty big increase in the field from 8 last year to 11, right?
That it is a significant increase. We have only several people here in the HPC Advisory Council that really helps put this on. So it's a tremendous load to have this number of teams coming. We're really ecstatic in terms of who and what countries are coming this year. I mean, we essentially have a great mix of every continent in the world apart from Australia and, of course, Antarctica. But maybe we'll get those next year.
Yeah, I heard that they've got some guys at McMurdo that are pretty good. They're thinking about it. They're on the fence.
All right.
So let's take a look at who the teams are. First one that we have to talk about is Team South Africa from the CHPC, and they are the returning champion, and they won last year the overall award in probably I'm going to say it flat out, it was the biggest upset in student cluster competition history, dating back to 2007.
And as we mentioned previously, they were out of the gate very late in terms of their equipment getting in at the last minute. So big kudos to them for getting everything put together and being able to calm down and relax and focus.
Well, they were also a brand new team. They had no experience, didn't have much of an HPC community there backing them up, except a fairly small number of very dedicated people. And they beat some really serious teams, including the powerhouse Tsinghua University team from China that had won 2 previous competitions in a row. They were looking to make it a three-peat. They also beat Hua Zhang, who I know I'm not going to pronounce these names right, which is another very skilled team from China, plus some experienced teams from the U.S. and from Europe. It was a really amazing and close victory.
You have to hand it to Happy Sithole in terms of what he's been able to put together there in CHPC and the supervisors and the advisors to this team, and this program is really starting to take off. And as I mentioned earlier, they're running their own Student Cluster Challenge
Yes.
in December, with the winner from that team moving on to ISC.
And I was there, and I have a lot of footage and blogs and things that I have to get published. I had a technical problem that put those things out of reach for quite a while, but I am going to publish that as the Lost Student Cluster Competition right at the end of ISC. But it's an amazing story. However, this team, in keeping with South Africa's policy, is not going to include any members from that winning team. This is all new students again. And they're the ones that won in the internal competition. That's who they're sending on. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they do. You can't discount them. I mean, what they did last year, and now that they have a taste of winning, I don't think you can count them out. I think they have to be taken seriously as one of the elite teams.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the fact that this team from South Africa is brand new from the ones that were here last year has nothing. You can't really put any odds on that because the people that were here last year were all new too as well. So I think there's some expectations now on them in terms of what can be accomplished, and I'm just happy to see a whole new team, because that just means 6 new students coming over here and being able to participate in this great competition.
But they're not going to sneak up on anybody. Not this year.
No, unless people have some short-term memories.
True. So let's take a look at some of the other teams. Let's take a look at the teams from China. China recently completed their Asian Student Supercomputer Challenge, which was also open to the world, and they're sending 3 solid teams. 2 of them from that competition. The first one is Shanghai Jiao Tong University. They were the champion. They beat out a team of 16 other players there.
Absolutely, and they were able to get some great performance out of their systems while they were using just the NVIDIA K20s.
Yeah,
and a lot of the other folks had the K40s. Now, for this time coming into ISC, they are using K40s.
Ooh.
So it'll be very interesting to see exactly what's going to happen and what this means to everyone else who are using K40s, including South Africa.
They did okay on LINPACK, but they were really strong on the applications, which tells me this is a team that can dive down into the scientific apps and really make them sing.
Absolutely, and I think when you look at China and the universities involved there, they have a history of really pre-competition going to those known applications and optimizing them.
Yeah.
So those 3 that are coming up, everyone should be looking to them as the front runners.
I think you're right. They're also sending the ISC14 runner-up, the second place university, which is Tsinghua. This is a team that's competed successfully before. They've tasted victory at 2 other ASC competitions, but they also won the very first ISC cluster competition in 2012.
Absolutely. They won overall, and NUDT that year won the LINPACK performance. So China did a pretty good sweep that first year of the cluster competition.
And again, they were their last ISC outing. They were barely edged by Team South Africa, and that's got to be something on their minds when they come back this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another team coming in is the University of Science and Technology from China. Don't know an awful lot about them. They did compete internationally before at SC12 in Salt Lake City, so they have some experience. They were kind of a middle of the pack team then. I'm not sure exactly what to expect. Do you have any insight, Brian?
No, I really don't. And I wanted to ask you, because I can't remember or not if they were actually at ASC14.
No. They were not at ASC14, which was a bit of a surprise.
Absolutely. So it means that, with the 80, I believe it was 84 initial teams, and then it got cut down to 20-something, maybe this team didn't actually make the final cut. So it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, it got cut down to 16 finalists, and they either didn't participate or didn't make the cut. They might not have participated because I would think, given their international experience, if they'd submitted an application, they probably would have gotten in.
Maybe so.
We don't know.
No, I don't know. What I do know, though, is this is one of the very few teams that are using the NVIDIA Tesla K20s.
Oh,
So
really?
they may
Okay.
be at a disadvantage from the get-go.
Well, but you got to look at Shanghai. Shanghai beat K40s all day long with K20s. So we'll see what happens. Moving on, we have another team from Asia, which is Ulsan National Institute of Science and Technology from South Korea. So a new country for ISC.
Yes, absolutely. This is one of the few teams that are coming in from different countries that have never participated in this competition. Them and Brazil, which I'm sure we'll get to later.
Yep, that's actually next. But uh, Ulsan is a semi-experienced team. They did compete at ASC13 in Shanghai, did okay, and they were at ASC14, did okay there. They know how the game's played, right? In those other competitions, they were again sort of in the middle of the pack, but they were new. Maybe this is the time when they're looking to break out.
This is a team that could be a very much the underdog of the competition.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right. And actually, speaking of another underdog, this would be the second major competition for Sao Paulo, Brazil, Team Brazil from University of Sao Paulo. And I think, weren't you down in Sao Paulo a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, I was just down there for the HPC Advisory Brazil conference. It was the first conference we had held there in Brazil, and it was really interesting to see the number of students that came to the conference. So there is a very much of a growing field of high-performance computing in Brazil, at least in the Sao Paulo region. We know that there's even more in Rio. But yeah, I mean, this team was in ASC14. They did fairly well. I think it's a really good learning experience for them. Maybe help set them up to do even greater things here at ISC.
What I liked about this team and where I think they're going to shine at ISC is that they're all very personable. They were talking, but at the ASC competition, they didn't really have, there wasn't a trade show or anything, so they had no way of interacting with anyone. But good kids, smart kids, fun kids to talk to. They were very good at troubleshooting. They had some early hardware problems, but it didn't stop them. And they just kept driving on till the end of the competition. So they're a great addition to it.
You know what's also interesting about this team is that a lot of them are double majors too. So they're focusing on computer science, but they're also focusing on physics and astronomy, which have to do a lot with some of the applications that we're going to have them run.
I've had former cluster competition organizers tell me that they think what they see is a huge difference between the teams that are just computer science guys versus the teams that are in the sciences, have people in the sciences that actually use the applications. That if you come at this with just a hardware mindset, it makes it difficult to win.
That's an interesting perspective. Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, based on their different branches of science and technology that they're bringing into this, those experience may really be very valuable and may push them a little bit over the edge over other teams.
Could pay off.
The other thing is, they're being advised by a great number of people there within the University of Sao Paulo, but the person that really got them into this competition, or at least, put that appropriate spirit of the competition was actually Professor Yufan Deng from Stony Brook University.
Oh, really?
And Stony Brook has gone on to win a couple student cluster competitions.
They won one early on, yeah. They've been participated in two or three. Solid team.
So, yeah, so they're, the advisors that are coming, I don't think he's going to actually be there at ISC. I'm not quite sure, but they're definitely getting a lot of support from folks that have won in the past.
Exactly. Moving on, the United States of America is sending two teams as well to do battle. The first one, it's going to be familiar to anyone who follows this competition and who doesn't. It's the University of Colorado Team Buffalo. And this will be their eighth appearance at a major cluster competition, going all the way back to the very first cluster competition in 2007.
Right, and the ones that came here last year, a lot of them were seniors. Don't know really what's going to play out this year. We have some new seniors and a few juniors on this team, so it may be a new dynamic. And to be honest, I think Colorado has a lot to prove here. I know Doug Smith has really been pushing his teams over the past 5 to 7 years on these things to be able to get a really huge win, but I think they've fallen short, and I really don't know what the reason here is for, and I'm hoping this new breed is going to show what exactly the University of Colorado can do.
Well, the thing with Colorado, they're a team that is involved in a whole lot of different aspects of computing in the university. For example, in the middle of the SC13 competition on the first day, several of the team members had to stop and monitor an actual rocket launch of a probe going to Mars because they were part of the team that was doing some of the analysis of the telemetry. So they had to stop and watch it live and monitor the telemetry as it came in. So they've got a lot of stuff going on, and I no, I don't want to say that takes away from what they can dedicate to the competition, but I would think it has to play a role in there somewhere.
Well, it's interesting to hear that they're, in the same time that they're competing, that there's actual real live science going on.
Yes.
That they're, that they're heavily involved in. So yeah, I mean, that is a certain extraction, but excuses. Let's see the W.
The one really cool thing about Colorado and other teams as well is that they've used this competition to build out an entire curriculum around some of these applications and around making scientific applications perform. So it really pays off for them there.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this isn't their first rodeo, and what they've been able to do in terms of furthering the education of their students goes, it speaks volume. I know personally a lot of ex-students that participated in these competitions, whether it was at the show site itself or quickly after, they did get job proposals from
Yes.
The vendor community and from other research labs and institutions.
Absolutely. Let's go to the other side of the U.S. now and talk about this thing called Mass Green, also known as the Chowder Consortium. But this is a multiple year competitor, primarily at the SC competitions. It's the first time they're going overseas. It's a team made up from MIT, Bentley, and Northeastern University.
Anytime you throw in anytime you throw an MIT in the mix, you never know what you're going to get.
You don't.
Your first assumption is like, this is the team to beat. But I don't know. I mean, it's such a hodgepodge. You really don't know how the team is going to mesh. Is the experience correct? Have they even worked together for a long time? I think this is going to be an interesting dynamic. I imagine if there's any university while we're watching what happens on the show floor at ISC to really start getting into arguments and fighting and maybe a fist fight or two coming in, it's going to be this team.
Well, that kind of comes from being from Boston too. The typical thing you hear in any bar in Boston is, what, you making fun of my friend? You looking at me? That kind of thing.
Exactly. This is why I plan on wearing my Yankees and jersey with my New York Rangers hat.
The thing about this team, though, is that from what I can tell, these look like the same guys that competed at SC13, but they were in something called the commodity track, where they put together the fastest multi-node system they could, but only spending $2,500, and they won that commodity track.
That's interesting. So they're coming in as winners of at least one track of last year's student cluster competition at supercomputing.
And they're coming in as, again, at least as far as I can tell, as a team that's worked together before. But this is a whole different game. Right? This is a whole different deal. Even though they were running true HPC applications, it's a different scale when you move past 3 or 4 nodes on up to probably 8 or 10.
Right.
So let's shift gears and shift continents and talk about Europe. We have Team Edinburgh coming back for the second year. They were a pretty good team last year.
Yes, they were. I mean, they were a close second in terms of impact performance. And, they were one of those teams that were really flying high. But, there was a couple mistakes here and there. And, this was one of those teams that had fewer students in the competition.
That's
and I
right.
think this year's the same thing.
How many? They only had three, I thought, last year. Or was it four?
No, it was a four-person team last year. It's
Okay.
going to be a four-person team again this year, and the reason for that is because these students aren't undergraduates; they're graduate students. So we provide a limitation in terms of how large their team can be to help even the playing field.
So it's like putting a restrictor plate on a stock car. You put a restrictor plate on their team to keep them from being too overpowering.
Oh yeah, I mean, they're a
Make it fair.
Lamborghini, but they can only go 65 miles an hour down the freeway.
I like that. You're keeping the brain cycles roughly equivalent.
Absolutely.
I like that. I didn't expect much from this team. It was first year team last year. Wasn't really sure what they were bringing to the table, expected them to be sort of middle of the pack, but they did a great job. They also had great support from Boston Group, and they really took advantage of that. They went over to Boston Group's headquarters and I think spent a day or two meeting with them and learning about supercomputing, clusters, all that kind of stuff.
Well, it's no surprise for you to learn that they have chosen Boston again to be the hardware vendor and sponsor.
And Boston, I did an interview with them. They really enjoyed participating in there as a sponsor, too. They had a good time.
That's great. That's what we hope for all sponsors. We encourage all the vendors to get involved because this is just a great competition to get students into HPC and be a part of this great this great field that we all are participating in.
And that's something we ought to mention in here too, is that corporate sponsors should get involved. They don't necessarily have to sponsor a team, but they could certainly sponsor the competition and get their name associated with it. But as importantly, if not more importantly, get a chance to meet and get to know what could be some very, very valuable future employees.
Absolutely, and this is one of the main reasons why Airbus for the third year in a row has sponsored each and every one of the ISC HPC Advisory Council student cluster competitions. It's that very reason. They understand that there's a need for this kind of talent in their industry, and they want to be that brand name associated with these students as a company to go work for. That they realize that this they are needed, and there is a place for them when they get out of college.
And plus it gives them an easy entree to go over and send some recruiters up and down the rows and say hi.
You bet. So I encourage all other other folks who are using HPC as part of their business to get involved. It's great for the community, and in turn it could be great for that company.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at the final two teams here of our 11-team field. This is the home team. University of Hamburg is the first one we're going to talk about, and I don't know an awful lot about them, although I do believe they are from Hamburg. Am I correct?
You you are absolutely correct.
Good. I'm glad my research has paid off.
You're right. This is a new team, filled with a lot of energetic young students, and it'll be interesting to see what they do since we really have absolutely no history with what they've done in the past.
I did notice in their pictures that they were all very smiley. A lot of smiles, way more smiles than you see from a typical cluster team.
It's interesting you say this, Dan, because on an individual picture level, they are smiling. However, in the group photo that they've provided, only one is smiling, which means is there a chemistry dynamic here that we may not really know?
I do really like how you're trying to stir the pot even before the competition. I enjoy that and I respect it. Not really sure if we could pull that out of a single group picture, though. Just saying. Don't know. But we'll see.
Hey, it's all you all choose a photograph to submit, and if that's what it is and that's the best take, I'm going to have to go under the assumption You guys may not really like each other.
Would you say it's almost a subconscious cry for help and for counseling
Absolutely.
and for team counseling?
I'm not. I'm a very big advocate for therapy, but
Okay. Good. Well, okay. Well, we'll stand by for that, and that's something we'll have our cameras trained on to see what we can find out.
absolutely that, as well as the Boston conglomerate. I think
Oh
we should
yeah,
have a full-time camera on.
could be a dust up there. Well,
Absolutely.
well, that actually was one of my ideas that I'm thinking about for next year. Is we'll put surveillance cameras in the cubes all the time.
Well, we did do that one year at supercomputing. We had, I believe it was actually University of Colorado. We had one camera positioned on them, and every now and then in our booth, when we'd be giving a presentation, we'd flip to them to see exactly what was going on. They would never know when we'd turn it on or not, so it was always interesting to see the faces or, whatever else can happen.
But Colorado, that's team steady. They're just sitting there plucking at keyboards. They're team steady. They've been there 8 times. You're not
There
going
was
to.
once we had a couple of people that were asleep on the table, which was
Oh,
great.
nice.
So
Okay.
there was no clicking of keys during that time.
Okay. Now, the final competitor for ISC14 this year is a team that's a favorite of mine, Chemnitz University of Technology. This is their second ISC13, and who knows what the hell they're going to bring.
This will be very fun to see. If anything, if it's anything like what they brought last year, I'm all for it. Anything that's unique, and if they want to wrap an interesting table around it or any other kind of furniture to make it look ominous, hey, whatever you want to do to make yourself stand out is good with me.
Well, what we're referring to, and you'll see this in the video, is what I dubbed their coffee table of doom. As the students were putting together their systems, I'm kind of walking up and down the row, taking a look at what they have, and I see something that it's like this big squared thing with louvers. And I'm looking at it and going, oh my God, that's a heat exchanger. Thinking that's like the outside of an air conditioning compressor. I'm thinking this is some sort of exotic liquid cooled phase change something whatever. And so I finally, once they get it together, go over and take a look at it and say, okay, you guys, you got to show me what's underneath this. Those louvers were simply window shades that were metal and were aluminum, and they pulled them up, and what they had under there, and they were all attached to what was a coffee table, and what they had under there were 4 big workstations that were jammed full with accelerators. Each workstation had 2 NVIDIA K20s and 2 Phi coprocessors. So they had a total of 16 accelerators, high-powered accelerators, on this cluster. And I mean, I think that's the most hardware anybody brought, right?
I think that's the most heterogeneous environment I've ever seen.
It was. It was, can these things get along? But I'm wondering, and as I asked him, how are you going to power all this up at the same time? There's no way you're staying underneath the power cap. And yeah, that was the problem.
I think if my memory serves me, they didn't actually power it all up. I think they only would use several nodes for different applications, while the others kind of stayed tuned down.
Well, the problem they had is that under the rules of all these cluster competitions, you can't turn off any part of your system. You can idle it and you can put it to sleep, but you can't turn it off. And what they were counting on was that particular applications would do better on the K20s, other applications would do better on the Phis, and that they'd be able to like idle the Phis and run the K20s or idle the K20s and run the Phis. Problem they ran into was that they couldn't get that idle power draw down low enough to enable them to really make that work.
Yeah, and I think word around the conference hall, I mean, it was really hot in Leipzig last year.
Oh yeah.
I think all eyes were focused at this table on the reasons for the heat.
If we went around with a heat gun, I think that we would have seen the most heat coming off that coffee table. I mean, that was just a seriously crazy system. That would be a good candidate for immersion and overclocking.
Absolutely.
But still they would have to get to the point where they had their apps optimized for one of the accelerators or the other. They
Right.
weren't there
And
wasn't
that,
anything they could run it all on.
and I think that's a difficult task for any of the universities to even just get everything optimized on one coprocessor, not on two different types. So they really put themselves in a situation where they were kind of behind the eight ball.
And that's the other thing. I hope the teams are reaching out to those vendors that are providing those coprocessors and accelerators, because I know that they're taking these competitions seriously, and they see them as an important proof point for their hardware, and they're happy to help. So if you're running into a roadblock, put up a flare. Send it to me, send it to the committee, put it on studentclustercompetition.com, comp.com, something. But there is help out there for you.
Okay, I think that's all the teams.
So this is going to be one hell of an exciting competition this year.
Yeah, I'm very excited, not only just for the number of teams that are now part of the competition, but just the large breadth of all the different locales that everyone's coming from. And it's a great experience for all the students, for all the vendors, for all the attendees to come and see what the next generation of high-performance supercomputing is going to be doing. I think it's just great all in all, and I hope I see a lot of smiling faces. I know in the past they've all had a lot of fun, and like I said in the earlier, we give them the nights off to go and do whatever they want. We do know some universities take advantage of it by just going to their rooms and working more on it. But the whole goal is just to go out there, have fun with each other, and go explore Leipzig.
And they will. They will. They'll explore Leipzig and also the conference. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Who do you, Brian Sparks, insider, who do you think's going to win?
I think Tsinghua is going to be coming through this year. I think they're under a lot of pressure after last year not doing a sweep.
Just edged out last year. It was very, very close.
Just edged out. I think they have their sight set. I think they're going to take the top position.
Okay, and the other thing that fuels that a little more is Tsinghua was very close behind Shanghai in winning at ASC too.
Right.
So okay. Do you have any favorites for highest Linpack?
Well, that you just mentioned them. I'm going to have to say the Shanghai Tong University. I think they're going to be coming in and taking the Linpack.
Shanghai, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you there. I don't see them taking highest Linpack. As a dark horse, I might be looking at Chemnitz to put all their marbles on grabbing Linpack. I might also take a hard look at Tsinghua for Linpack because they've won it before. Overall winner, I gotta say, and you're gonna think I'm crazy, I'm gonna say I think I would bet on South Africa.
Well, we each have our own opinions, and the only way we're going to really see who's right or wrong is by watching what happens and seeing the results, which are going to be on Wednesday at 6 p.m. in Hall 1. It's the main hall. It'll happen right after the last keynote, so I encourage everyone to stick around to see this great number of students that are coming. I mean, it's going to be a total of almost 65 students in all. Or more that are going to be up there on stage receiving awards, and I think they all deserve our applause and respect for coming and doing this.
Absolutely. And also, you can go out and lay your own bet down. We put together a virtual betting pool that you can go to. The address is up on the screen now. You go out, use 1,000 virtual dollars, bet on who you think is going to win, team or teams. You can also bet the trifecta, or what I'm calling the clusterfecta, to bet on the win, place, or show order, and then bet on win, place, show, or Linpack winner. So that will be fun as well. And thank you for your time, Brian. I really appreciate you running down these things with me. This is going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm really excited for this. And I can't wait to see things develop. It's going to be great to see you there in person again, Dan.
Yep.
And, I wish all the teams that are participating great luck.
Absolutely. We will cover it from build up to tear down. See you in Germany.